Hello, my name is Ivan. I am an app developer, app designer, and therefore an app evangelist in Shorcut. I've been working in Shorcut since 2016, been part of a lot of fun app projects, looking forward to the ones in the future as well. I am so lucky today that I have with me my friendly colleague, Slava from Chili Labs in Riga, who's going to join us here today.
Thanks, Ivan, for nice introduction. And yeah, mostly I will tell about the financial part of it as a app developer doing this for past 8 years in Chile and creating my own app recently. So I have really all the reasons to figure out is it beneficial for me or not. So I spent a lot of time, actually around a week or so, uh, to figure out all the documentation and read through Apple guides and understand the consequences of it. So I will try to share my thoughts, my recommendations, and my overall impression with you. So let's start with it.
Absolutely. And we've been very curious about what all these changes means and how it will involve our life as developers, but also as consumers of this thing. So, all of the good discussions we've had internally and with our colleagues is going to be shared today. And the goal for us is to clarify the new changes so that it makes easier for you to understand what the changes are going to be and what the consequences might be. So, by that, I'll let Slava take over and start this discussion.
So yeah, let's start. Basically, fees on monetization. What should we expect from it? Yes, why we are here? Because the European Union created so-called DMA or Digital Markets Act to prevent gatekeepers. It's a six big tech companies, and Apple is one of them, from monopolization of market. Currently, there is no way for new developers or independent developers to launch on App Store, and the European Union wants to fight that. So the idea is great, and Apple made a great job of doing a great PR activities on this, saying how great it's going to be. So let's figure out, is it really so? Do we have any issues there or not? So Apple had to comply with the European regulations starting in March. And as a big corporation, they will try as well not to lose their profits and control. So let's see how it goes. So a bit of story before that. It only affects European users, so it's only for European market, and according to the various sources, but I will highlight Revenue Cat. For that, only 12% of the money on all App Store is from European Union. So the biggest share is of course US, and then the other markets. So yeah, it's not a huge market, but it's still 12%. It's pretty significant. So for a while, we had only one option. If you wanted to do in-app purchases in Apple, you had only one option, which is if you have less than 1 million of revenue yearly, you can apply to small business program, which is 15% on all your in-app purchases. And if you are more than that, then you pay 30%. But if the user is retention for more than a year, then the commission for this user is reduced to 15%. And there were no other ways around. You could not implement the web payments or implement something else like Google proposes. Basically, Google policy allows you to have external payments if you include Google Pay as one of the options. So I was my initial thinking was that Apple will go the same way, and there were big drivers for this. Maybe you remember Epic Games, Spotify, Netflix. They all have the web-based payments, and they don't do subscriptions in the Apple. So they were also the drivers of this change. So I was really expecting Apple to do something that Google does, but they decided that they really need to invent something new, and they created new metrics, which is install based. and it's absolutely new, so nobody worked with it before. How it works? Basically, it works similar to the revenue model, but you measure installs. And as an indie app developer myself, and working with multiple clients, I was really excited that I had a call with Apple, and they proposed me to switch to new scheme, to to get this 2% commission back. It's great, and I was thinking that yes, it's a nice bonus. Thanks Apple for reducing the commissions, and even significantly more, they will reduce the commissions on the after you have passed the 1 million of installs yearly. So they reduced their commissions from 30% to 17%, uh, plus 3% of payment processing fee. So this is Apple payment option one, what they propose. And they introduced one more new term called CTF, or core technology fee. So basically, Apple says, all right, if we are not getting our cut that big, so we have to get money somehow for providing you with the infrastructure of the Xcode and all the ecosystem that Apple provides, Apple Watch and whatnot. So they introduced this core technology fee, which is zero point 0.5 euro per install above 1 million of installs, which sounds reasonable, right? 1 million of installs. According to the statistics, most of the apps in Europe, they don't have that amount of installs. Well, initially, from my research, most of them are above that number. Then Apple proposed option number two, which is very similar to the option number one, without Apple processing the payments, so that you have to use Stripe or Braintree or whatnot, Kevin, for something for processing your payments. And I really think that this is the less interesting option for developers, because the commission what they provide, 3%, is fairly reasonable, and it's just flat 3% without any processing fee terms, like Stripe has 0.2, like depending on the volume, of course, but yeah, on average, Stripe takes a bit more from the transaction. And if we are working with mobile app payments, there could be subscriptions for $1, for $2. So it can be much higher than the flat number can be higher than the percentage. So I don't think that this option is really viable for many of the developers, but also the same rules of installations are applying. And option number three, which I was initially thinking that it's aimed for the big corporations and big companies like Epic Games and Spotify, is that they will not have any cuts at all, because it will be published externally, so on external store, and it will also use the external payments. So with the payment provider, it's the same as the option number two. Basically, you take someone else. You don't take the Apple. Here you cannot take it, but you can take like Stripe, and it will approximately go with 2 and 5% or 3%. And then you have the same of 0.5 euro per each new install after 1 million of installs, which is reasonable as well. But one unknown thing is external store commission. Basically, we don't know what kind of external stores there will be. There is no information about it. There is no information on who will be maintaining these stores, who will create them. But one is known for sure, that Apple will have the same regulations and the same quality standards, so they will audit these stores. So I assume that my suggestion would be that yeah, it can be close to the Apple commissions, and it will be not very free as we would like to. But yeah, so I was quite okay with that, and then I started digging a lot on their documentation, reading a lot of materials. And at the start, people were really, really excited. But the further you dig uh, to the documentation, the more you understand that it's not that simple. And first warning sign is that you cannot have both at the same time, and you cannot switch back. So basically, you have to be really cautious on what you are doing, and you have to really understand why you are doing this, because there is no way back. Apple even roll out the Apple fee calculator, so it's really simple interface where you can input your revenue, you can put your installs proposed for the year, and you can calculate yourself like what would be the commission if you reach this number. So it looks good. So you can do it yourself by opening this via QR code or pressing on the link. But there is a big gap that not everyone notices on how do the Apple counts installs. And this is actually a flaw that breaks all of this model. And yeah, I was really shocked that Apple proposed this, because you cannot go back once you choose this, and every app update that you going to roll out will be considered as a new app install. So let's say if you are having 100,000 users from Europe, and you roll out a release every month, so it gives us 1,200,000 of users in total. We don't consider any growth and stuff like that. And that means that we will owe Apple 100,000 euro after this year, which is insane. And I really don't know the businesses who can do that. And the second option, what I thought that, for example, as an indie developer, let's say I learned somehow that my competitor is having an app with the same industry, and he's my competitor, and he accepted the new terms, then I can just um, go to Bulgarian market, Romanian market, or some where the ads are the cheapest, but still it is European Union, and I can purchase an ad to add installs to their app, and I will pay $5 or €5 cents for that, and the competitor will pay half a euro for that, and soon they will go bankrupt. So this is a really rigged system. It's really strange. You cannot and how Apple will get this money back, it's really a strange system to know. So with that in mind, I think that uh, my conclusions are like this: that scenario one is viable for indie developers or who do not consider European market as their own and their main. So that if you have less than 80,000 installs for European region per year, uh, maybe you should consider it, but really be careful because there is no way back. So how to check it? You can go to your App Store console, App Store Connect, go to Trends, filter Europe, last year or year to date, and see the numbers. And if they are close to 60,000, I would not risk it. But if you don't have any audience at all and 2% win is something significant for you, please go for it. Don't think that it will impact you a lot. Scenario number two, I don't think that it's worth the legal fees, the paperwork, the commissions. There will be extensive regulation. You will have to provide all the documentation. I don't think that this 0.5% or 1% even is worth it. as well as the Stripe pay as you go is cheaper, but you have the flat fee. And if you know the unit economics that it will be good for you, then definitely do it. But if you're not sure, I would not consider this option as well. And number three, as I said, this is mostly for the big players. And if you're really confident that you can get like the yeah, your LTV should be more than core technology fee per install plus cost per acquisition plus marketplace fee, which is unknown yet. And it still is more beneficial than existing app policy, which I doubt. But yeah, for example, Spotify, Netflix, maybe it's worth for them, but yeah, it should be really really considered. But if you are a huge corporation, then definitely you have the resources and capacities to calculate all of this. But yeah, I don't think that average indie developer should even think about it. It's not worth it at all. So yes, summing up. Some cases can be found useful, but in most cases, I would not recommend to do anything right now at all, because, as I said, you cannot go back once you choose the new Apple payment scheme model in Europe, and yeah, you will be the testing rabbit, and a lot of changes will come, and you will have to be the pioneer in this, and you will have to deal with all the legal problems and stuff that Apple throws at you. And in my opinion, European Union should revise these changes and see if it's good enough, because if it's just installs, then it's great, it's really amazing. But if it's installs and updates and uh, 10 other conditions what are considered as app install, then the risk is too high, and you can owe Apple thousands of dollars just because your app went viral, or Apple highlighted your app and said, hey, this is our collection of a day, and you go bankrupt. So yeah, please be careful about this. Let's see where March brings us, because there will be some new updates on this. And if you're still thinking of it, and you are not sure, let's talk it out. Maybe reach out to us, and we will try to calculate and see the risks, what it brings to you. Yeah, you can reach out to me or to any guys at Shortcut. And I guess that's it from me. Uh, Thanks.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Slava, for going through the economics about this change. Today, I will be talking a little bit about some other subjects as well, but first, let me introduce myself. My name is Ivan Hjelmeland, and I am an app evangelist at Shorcut. I've been working in Shorcut since 2016, mainly as a developer. I'm also a designer when it comes to my education. So that's probably why I have a combination of those two into the app evangelist role right now. I love apps, and that's the only thing I focus on in my spare time, but also in my real life and my work hours. So it's a pleasure for me to be here to talk about that subject. So let's jump back 25 years to look at this BlackBerry 850 from 1999. If I would ask you the question, can you please point out the alarm clock app on this device? I guess 100% of you would be correct and tap on the watch icon in the middle of the BlackBerry, which is totally correct. But by that, I'm also saying that apps as we know them on a home screen is something that we've known for at least 25 years, right? Maybe more even when it comes to computers as well. Let's jump fast forward a few years to one of my favorite phones in the world, Sony Ericsson T610. I don't remember how old I was. I was probably 14 years old, 2003, when I got my hands on this the first time. Loved it. I think the biggest difference from the BlackBerry onto this one is probably that they went away from the QWERTY keyboard and into this T9 keyboard, which was amazing for us back then. But also at the same time, as you can see, apps are here still as we know them, only on the color screen, and that you have the T9 keyboard as well. Then let's jump to the iPhone, where they kind of just removed the whole keyboard, which was like the big dramatic change. But also, as you still can see, the apps are still there. So if I ask you again, can you please point out the alarm clock app on this phone? You would probably correct in this case as well, because it's something that is familiar to us and that we know. So Steve Jobs stood on stage in 2007 when he revealed the iPhone. You probably remember that presentation. I definitely do, and I love the presentation, and I sometimes see it back and forth these days as well. But how were this phone going to be for developers? Was a question he asked, but he also answered it. So he said that, you know what, there's going to be an innovative new way to create application for a mobile device. He said that there's probably not going to be a need for an app store. You have this new way of building apps on the device. It's going to be through Web 2.0 and Ajax or Ajax, and it's going to be able to integrate with the iPhone services, instant distribution, easy to update through Safari, which is the browser on the phone. That was the ideal idea. Now, this idea still exists today, so it's still possible to do it, at least for now, through something I like to call progressive web apps. Now, this is an example of the Uber app, where you can go to m.uber.com and you can see the Uber mobile version of their website. Then you have the option to add this to your home screen. As you can see, you will have the icon in the middle there with the Uber icon, and then you can enjoy it on your phone as if it was an app. So as you can see, the URL in the bottom on the left screen is removed on the one on the right screen because you decided to add it to the home screen and you regularly use it as a typical app as we know it, the typical app icon on the screen. But developers requested more. They didn't want to work in Safari. They really wanted to have access to all the hardware and the mechanisms we could have on the phone, and also the offline capabilities and stuff like that. Therefore, Steve Jobs went on stage again in 2008, where he said that we will launch something called the App Store, where a developer can pick a price for their app. They will receive 70% of the revenues. They go straight to the developer. No credit card fees, no hosting fees, no marketing fees, and you're paid monthly. Now, this is the App Store as we know it today. And to be honest, there haven't been much changes over the last 15 years. Actually, 16 years. It's been quite the same. But these are the apps as we know them. So for instance, the Uber example, you go into the App Store, you find Uber, you download the app, and you have it accessible. So as you can see, based on the web version I showed you earlier, this looks a little bit different. I would say that Uber has probably put in a lot more time and effort into making this a better experience for the consumers. But this is how we know App Store today, and it's very similar to how it was back in 2008 as well. Now, if we look at like App Store in a timeline, a lot of things has happened over the couple of years, but it's still almost the same. Let's dig into it. So, in July 2008, the App Store launches. At that time, it had 552 apps available. 552 apps available. That's almost the same amount as I have apps on my phone today. App Store hits 10 million app downloads the first week. Think about that for a while. 552 apps available, 10 million app downloads the first week. I wish my app was one of those first back in 2008, to be honest. Fast forward a year, App Store turns 1 year. Now there are 65,000 apps in the App Store. So this is like the super rapid growth of more apps coming into the App Store. And then 5 years later, we have 900,000 apps in the App Store. Things are changing pretty rapid here. App Store hits 50 billion app downloads, becoming big now. January 2021, they released the App Store Small Business Program, as also Slava mentioned, which is probably one of the biggest changes outside offering in-app purchases and subscriptions in the App Store. This is a big thing. So if you are a small business earning less than $1 million a year on your app, you should really, really consider applying for the App Store Small Business Program. If you have any questions around that, please reach out and I'll gladly help you on that. So from 2008 until 2022, there have been 320 billion US dollars paid to developers selling digital goods and services in the App Store. 320 billion US dollars. And the App Store consumer spending hit 89.3 billion alone in 2023, which was a 3% up from 2022. This is only for 2023 alone, 89.3 billion US dollars. In July 2023, the App Store turns 15 years old, and there is now 1.9 million apps in the App Store. This is not the highest number. Actually, the highest number was between 2020, I think, 2019 and 2020. I don't have the correct number for that. So there's been a little decrease in the amount of apps in the App Store, basically due to a cleanup that Apple did. But we're now at 1.9 million apps. And if you then think about the amount of downloads we've reached, we had 50 billion downloads in 2013. So 10 years later, we have 257 billion app downloads, which is insane. So the App Store has gone from something that was not an area Apple wanted to go into to then becoming this big marketplace for downloading your apps, but also a very big and important business for a lot of companies, including Apple. But now, the recent years, there's been a lot of companies saying that Apple has some sort of a monopoly on the App Store, that the App Store is a monopoly and that Apple has a monopolic behavior when it comes to the App Store. I remember that Slava mentioned 12% from Revenue Cat, that was the EU market when it comes to apps. Apple itself has stated that 7% of the global App Store revenue comes from EU. I think there's a differentiation there between like the ad market, but also like the App Store revenue by itself. So 7% of the global App Store revenue comes from the EU. And that's also now when we see the changes that also Slava mentioned. So I just wanted to quote this as well. This is from Phil Schiller from Apple. He says that the changes we're announcing today comply with the Digital Markets Act's requirements in the European Union, while helping to protect EU users from the unavoidable increased privacy and security threats this regulation brings. Our priority remains creating the best, most secure possible experience for our users in the EU and around the world. Phil Schiller from Apple Fellow. Apple is really focusing on the privacy threats, but also security threats with these regulations from the EU. So that's kind of their standpoints. But they're doing some changes now. So the biggest change is that the new APIs is enabling developers to use the NFC technology in their banking and wallet apps throughout the European Economic Area. And in the EU, Apple is introducing new controls that allow users to select a third-party contactless payment app or an alternative app marketplace as their default. For developers, what does this actually mean? There are multiple new options. We have new frameworks and APIs for creating alternative marketplaces. We have new options for distributing iOS apps in the alternative marketplaces. There are new options for payment processing, and there is also a potentially reduced commission. Slava mentioned all of these into details, so I'm not going to mention that details about them. But I really wanted to focus on one thing today, and that is, what does this mean for consumers of apps? In theory, it means that whenever you go into your App Store to download apps, you have multiple choices to choose from. The App Store by itself is one of the options, but what are the other options going to be? We don't know yet. But there are an option that it will be alternative app marketplaces. The same goes for Apple Pay and the payment and the NFC chipset that we have. When you are on your phone, you can decide to choose if it's going to be the Apple Wallet with Apple Pay that is going to be the default, or it could be someone else providing that. Maybe it's going to be like Visa or MasterCard or something similar, who still is there today. Could also be that PayPal is going to deliver a new marketplace or a new wallet where you can choose that as a payment solution. We don't know yet. And to be fair, it's a little bit too early to speculate as well. So By looking into this, it's still a little bit unclear to me what this actually means for us as both consumers but also developers. There's a lot of discussions going back and forth, and it seems to me that there are different angles and rumors going on along the way. So, I've decided to put in some questions here that I've had with colleagues in Shorcut but also in Chile, and I wanted to share them with you as well. These are basically questions that I would think would be relevant to ask yourself. So, let's start with the first one. What will be the motivation for you to swap out Apple Pay for an alternative payment solution? So let's say today I'm using my phone, I'm paying with Apple Pay in the store, and I'm super happy with that service. It's one of the things that I love about my phone, that I can use it as a payment tool. But let's say that, for instance, PayPal is going to offer an alternative to Apple Pay. Now, why would I change from Apple Pay to PayPal in this case? What is going to be the motivation for me to do so? Is it going to be a better alternative? Is it going to be a faster alternative? Is it going to be a cheaper alternative? Is it going to be a regulated alternative? We don't know yet, right? But is there going to be some motivation for me to do that change? We don't know yet. Who will be the creators and owners of the new marketplaces? The new marketplaces will be in EU for now, but are there any vendors in EU that would own and decide to create these marketplaces, and who will that be in that case? I can tell you one example that I've been thinking about. Not that I think that they will do it, but I'm thinking about it. Let's say that Spotify decides to do, like, we want to create a new app store, an alternative app store in the EU, which is going to be exclusively for all the audio streaming services that we use, podcasts, uh, music, you name it. All of those could be in a different or a separate marketplace. Will that be a thing? Is that an option for them? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. Will EU create their own marketplace? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. Where will this go? Who will be the creators and owners of the new marketplaces? And who are the natural ones to do so in the EU? Will it be a vendor from the outside, for instance, from the US market coming in doing that in the EU, or will it be someone else? How easy will it be to download apps from an alternative marketplace? I recently moved to Sweden from Norway, and doing that transition, I was considering, should I swap my App Store location from Norway to Sweden? When I tried to do that, I got a question saying like, "Hey, do you want to move?" Or sorry, we cannot move you now because you still have subscriptions active in Norway. If you decide to switch App Store account, we will also have to shut down your subscriptions in the Norwegian App Store. You won't have them along the way. So that made it harder for me. So I'm still stuck in the Norwegian App Store, even though I'm living in Sweden right now. And then I was thinking, how easy will it be for me to download apps from an alternative marketplace? Do I have to swap the whole marketplace and only consume apps from this one marketplace? Or can I have both active at the same time? How will that work? What we know is that you're not allowed to have an app installed from two sources at the same time, which also Slava mentioned. So that means if I, for instance, download Facebook from the original App Store, I'm not allowed to download Facebook from the other one. Then I have to delete the one I have on my first app marketplace first, and then I can install the other one. But how will this transition be? Will the best option for me be to choose like the marketplace in the EU and then use only that marketplace for the rest of my phone's life, or will I be able to do both in an easy way? We don't know yet. Will we see other types of apps in the alternative marketplaces? Some examples can be like adult content and gambling, which for now are prohibited by Apple in the App Store. Will the new marketplaces support this? Will there be an option to download apps like this in another marketplace? Will it be worth it to have your app in the alternative marketplaces? Slava has covered this already in depth, but still, will it be worth it to have your app in the alternative marketplace? It's a question you have to ask yourself. Does Apple play a crucial role in maintaining security and privacy? They've focused a lot on this in their reply to the DMA. And how important is this role? I feel safe when I download an app from the App Store because I know that they've gone through it and looked through it, and I think it's a great way to download the app, and I know that Apple has some control over it. I know that Google Play has gone through a journey where there was a lot of malware and bad apps out there. I'm not sure how that situation is now, but I think it's improved. But if you look at like the web, for instance, as an example, there are no gatekeepers on the web keeping out the malware. So if you visit the website, it's kind of up to you to figure out if it's something you would trust or not. So are Apple actually playing a crucial role in maintaining security and privacy, as they state? I think that's also a relevant question to ask yourself. Will there be similar regulations in other parts of the world outside of the EU? Will EU be the first one to implement these regulations? And will, for instance, Asia or some of the other come after and do the same? Will there be other regulations? Will there be regulations in the US as well? We know that there have been some regulations in California already. Will there be more regulation like this in other states in the US or in the US in general as well? Also, a question we could ask each other. How will EU react to the new changes from Apple? That is one of the questions I really like to get an answer to. I would love for EU to react to these and say what they mean, because now there's a lot of speculation and there's been a lot of strong opinions from different companies, which is both entertaining and also a little bit frightening to read. There's a lot of good discussions going on there. But how will EU react to the new changes? And then I have one last question that I want you to think about. And that is, was this the intended outcome from the EU? I'm not sure it was, but this is where we are today. There's still a lot of good discussions going on. I would love to hear your thoughts and your opinion on this, and we definitely have a lot of good chats on this in Shorcut and Chile. So that was all I had for today. I hope you got a lot of questions yourself, and I hope we can have some good discussions going on. And let's see what the future brings.
Ivan, thanks. That was really great. I'm really getting thrown to the old times when the iPhone was presented, and back now, impressed by the numbers. So yeah, it was a really good content. I think that we covered most of the changes. So once again, if there are questions about the financial parts, is it worth it for you? Are you still in doubt? We're not doing this professionally, but we definitely can help you answer some questions. Mm, Reach out. Yeah, Ivan.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree with you there, Slava. And to be honest, this is subjects that are really, really important for us as well, because this is going to define how we are going to be distributing apps in the future, how we're going to consume apps and payments in the future as well. So we would love for you to get in touch, and we would love to answer all your questions as well. This is just start of a journey, and really looking forward to be part of that journey in the future as well. Thank you for now, and thank you for listening to us.